right, well, let's get going. I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. I do not see any public comment, so we will move forward to our agenda. Good afternoon, Ms. Cribbs. First, we have our purchasing agenda.
Okay.
I'll let you give an overview. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start down through. The first couple items are just adjustments to blanket purchase orders. We set them up at the beginning of the year. The recess aids, the first one, or West Michigan janitorial. Given the last couple of years, it was such a strange year and didn't really know what to set the blanket up, so we typically have the building submit plans. So we're just tweaking that as we've gotten some adjusted plans, and we need a little bit additional funding there to get us through the end of the year. Recess duties. The next item down is for woodland commercial equipment. And that again, we have a lot of aging equipment, so repairs are costing us more than we anticipated. And dual enrollment. This is another one where we've got an estimate in there to start with at the beginning of the year as we've gotten through the actual invoices for fall and winter. It's coming in higher than we had originally budgeted. And Ms. Schottke, you'd asked when we met earlier, that's for 171 students for fall and 177 students for winter. So we have a large number of students participating in dual enrollment.
That's great. Is that separate from our middle college program? Or is that?
That includes it.
It includes it. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And then we've got another one there to increase the blanket order for the salt sand mixture for de-icing. Hopefully we're going to start to be at the end of that
Yes.
season, but it will carry over and store until next fall. The next item, we've got some funding for emergency connectivity funding. This is additional devices for Chromebooks and for Apple iPads. And we've got some upgraded network electronics equipment for Grand Rapids University Prep Academy. That is funded through our USF funding, the E-rate funding. The next item is for a continuous quality improvement process to align with our district strategic plan. And that is funded with our Title II funds. And the next one, the Culturally Responsive Leadership Institute Academy. We're planning on a 3-day academy that would be available to principals and other administrators and central office staff as well. And so it's a 3-day academy here in Grand Rapids.
I have a question, if I could. On this group, I noticed that they do equity audits. Have they done an equity audit for us, or is
The
that?
design group?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Adjusted school equity.
I am not sure, and I thought Eric Harmson was going to be here since he was the one that is leading it to be able to answer more questions.
Just curious. Thank you.
You know, he and Malika Brown have been definitely spearheading our activities in that area and trying to move us forward. Under the last one there is additional licenses for wireless presentation devices for classrooms, and that is part of our ESSER funding. Also under ESSER funding, we have a customized SAT preparation program with academic approach. That's something for those secondary students getting ready for SAT.
I'm sorry, is that for all of the high schools or middle schools, or?
I think with SAT, I think it's going to be at the high school level.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's right. And that's for our 4 high schools, I believe, or 5?
It would be all of our high schools, so
Okay.
even our small high schools would have it available.
Okay, any other questions or discussion about this purchasing agenda?
Just one of the other questions I had was in terms of technology, do you feel like GRPS is getting either at or above the mark in regards to technology moving us forward? We're going to be able to have it, 3 years into the future and still be ahead of the ball game?
I was gonna say, I'm gonna defer to Craig if he wants to chime in. He's our expert on our district technology.
Yeah, good afternoon, Reverend Matias. So really, there's kind of two approaches there as we think through moving the technology needle forward for us. So one is in student devices and being able to continue to keep students online whether they're home or not. And in that area, we had taken some great strides with the bond deployed devices that really started kind of in the 2016-17 era. And then as we went into pandemic, that ramped up exponentially. And so we feel that we're able to stay on par and continue to push the envelope as we have ESSER and ECF funding to help us do so. And we're looking for strategies to continue to maintain that long term. As you know, devices like these don't have a 10-year shelf life or operational life. And so being able to sustain that long term is really kind of what we're looking at now. And we're hoping to make those inroads right now with these purchases so that we've chopped off that first 3 to 5 years, and then we can look at some incremental increases to keep that up long term. For teacher technology, classroom tech, that's an area where we've really struggled in the last number of years. We really started in earnest putting in teacher technology systems in 2004 as part of the 2004 bond, and have tried to maintain a level of technology. We were at the cutting edge then. That was a long time ago in technology terms. And have struggled in the more recent years. We're taking advantage of ESSER dollars here, and we have taken advantage of bond dollars with building renovations, such as Ottawa, Union, CF Ross Middle High, all of those programs, in an attempt to make sure that we are at the bleeding edge for what we can put in the classroom to assist staff members in the day-to-day teaching. And so now we're replicating that and cranking up the dial every step of the way to hopefully stay on the bleeding edge, so that 10 years down the line, we won't be in the same scenario where we go, okay, do we have to do a forklift upgrade to everyone? Can we do some of these incremental changes to hopefully keep it at a status quo for all the classrooms? Actually, one of the items on here, the Vivi, is an update to what we have been doing in classroom tech. So that's a big add, is wireless presentation software, so that whether I'm on my handheld device or my laptop or whatever, a teacher can present and even give students opportunities for presentation as well. And so we hope to keep that keeps the level high in the classroom as well.
Because I know a couple years back, maybe, Burton had received a grant with Apple, and then most of their teachers were fitted, or was it the?
It was so Burton Elementary's teachers and all of their students received devices as part of that. In addition, they also provided an Apple TV for each classroom to be able to do some presentation there as well.
And we've been able to take advantage of what those teachers learned and then teaching our other teachers, or the technology side, or that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, in fact, we've had a cross section of teachers from the various grade levels that have informed our processes for how should that classroom tech package improve and change over the years. And so we're hopefully learning from, classroom. What I think is a great classroom instructional tool may not be a great classroom instructional tool. So hearing from the folks who are literally on the front lines is what we're trying to do there. And with 2 instructional tech specialists now, which we obtained in 2019 for the first time, they've really helped us in that regard, because they've been able to stay right on the front line with teachers and translate what are the needs in the classroom to what technology can apply there. And so we have done a lot of learning there, I think.
Question on technology along that same vein. Have we explored using Zoom and other means of communications to try to reduce the number of in-person meetings that we have for staff, and perhaps reduce some of the travel involved, logistics?
Yes, so we've actually kind of taken two prongs at that as well. So we had implemented Microsoft Teams, which is the Microsoft version of Zoom, right? Actually, it does a lot more than Zoom does because it does some collaboration work as well. And so we were starting to implement that for staff right about the time we closed for COVID. With Zoom being so prevalent and easy to use, external and internal, we adopted that, and we continue to maintain licenses for all of our staff to be able to run Zoom meetings. And we know that teachers for PLCs, administrators for meetings throughout the district use both a combination of Zooms and Teams to Zoom and Teams to bridge that gap. And there's many administrators that encourage continuing that remote connection, just because, well, frankly, it's an easy way to get together and not have to worry about drive time and when going from one meeting to another. So that helps as well.
Good.
I just say on one note on that, for our budget meetings where we typically have, they're very short meetings, and the principals would have, in prior days, had to drive across town for this very short meeting, but we did last year was on Zoom, but we continued it this year because so many building principals are covering in classrooms and other students in their buildings, so we didn't want to, oh, here, by the way, you got to drive across town for a short meeting. So.
Right.
Yeah, and the collaboration is easy with sharing documents and being able to add to something if you're editing it or that kind of stuff. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yep, absolutely. We've seen a lot more adoption of both Google Docs and Microsoft Docs in the last 2 years as a result. Yeah.
I bet, yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. May I please have a motion for approval of the purchasing agenda?
Move to approve the purchasing agenda.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. We'll move forward to our reports, updates, and discussions. First is our February 2022 financial statements.
I'd say I wouldn't spend a lot of time on the financial statements. Just we're tracking as we expect. So one very nice note. It doesn't show up here because these are as of February 28th. Our consolidated application was finally approved by MDE in March.
Great.
They've had some struggles this year with a software upgrade, so that initial, where we normally have to submit by July 1st to have a start date, it was into February this year before we could actually even submit our application. So, and then they got everybody's at once, and it took a while, but we finally have our consolidated application approved. And we're able to do a cash draw, which was also very nice.
Oh, nice.
Great.
Any questions on the February financial statements?
No?
Okay.
All right, we'll move forward to our bond construction update. Whomever, both of you. Mr. Smart, Mr. Nguyen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I asked Long to join because he's, to this point, my security blanket on some of the information
Good.
from the past, but I'll do my best here. We'll start with Union High School renovation. The project has now been completed, and we're working on some punch list items. We had been waiting for a bank of lockers to arrive, and we finally received them last week. Moving on to Ottawa High School and Union High School roof projects. Previously, they had been paused in the process, but Union roof has started. It has begun. And we're anticipating the Ottawa roof, which is a full tear-off and rebuilding, will start in April, pending on weather. So it should be happening here within the next several weeks. Innovation Central, that one has been a little nerve-wracking for all of us. The original bids were due last week, but after we received a lot of requests from subcontractors, we extended it, and the bids are due now tomorrow. I was just informed this morning that there are two categories, the mechanical and demolition categories, that they're requesting an additional week. If we do that, we're expecting to have at a minimum two companies that are bidding. So we are considering that. We probably will do that because it still gives us time to do the necessary vetting before we bring it to the board for approval. So that is the report on the bond projects. You have any questions?
Do you know, are they requesting additional time because of the complexity of the project or just because of their own capacity for bidding? You may not know, just curious.
I think it's a little bit of both, and,
Yeah.
feel free to.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of both.
Yeah.
Right now, the turnout for the pre-bid opening wasn't good.
Yeah,
Everyone's busy right now, so.
yep,
Yeah, one thing that we are going to be pushing for, and you may be seeing this, we're going to be shifting our process and schedule when it comes to bidding. By the time that we go out for bids in the spring, it's too late. Contractors are always looking for work early on, so we are starting to gear ourselves to start putting projects out for bids in the fall.
great.
Trying to get ahead of other companies, other clients that they may have for summer construction. So we are hoping that by taking that approach and making that minor change, we will begin to see a little bit more of competitive bids and more interest in our projects.
Yeah, great idea.
What was I mean, I heard the rationale, but in terms of really looking at pushing it forward, what was some of the issues that you guys were facing?
Pushing the bids?
The bids to the fall rather than the spring.
Oh, well, yeah. It's we're trying to get ahead of the capacity of contractors. By the time that April or March, by the time that we're already bidding for summer work, many contractors are already booked for summer work because there are many people that go out early enough to secure better pricing, to secure a better schedule for their products. So when we come in the spring, we may be late. So now we're pretty much fighting with what's left.
And it has to do with the lead time on the equipment or the material too. We want to bid it out sooner so they can purchase it and get it in time.
That's a new thing that we're encountering
Yeah.
too, because of
Right.
the supply chain problems that we're facing. The lead time on products are really, really long nowadays. I mean, some of the mechanical equipment we're hearing, is taking up to 30 months. Yes, before they commit to getting something to us. So that is another reason to push it forward.
Yeah, I was thinking too in terms of internally, what did you do in your team to really say, hey, we need to push these projects forward? Who needs to do what? Or
Well,
not that I'm looking for all the details, but just
yes, it's primarily how we begin to look at projects now. When we get a list of projects, now we're starting to now look at the schedule way ahead of time. We know that this is the target date, so we will be working with the target date in mind, and then work backwards to see when it is that we need to be going out for requests for proposals, evaluations, and things of that nature. So. Our goal is to start going out in the fall, October, November. So now that means that our team and our consultants will have to then begin to work towards having the documents done early rather than later. There may be some pushback and complaints by some people, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
The constant is change, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Flores.
One of the concerns that we've had and expressed from a ethnic and racial minority lens, if you will, small businesses lens and gender lens, is that we need to be doing things to also encourage some of the affected classes, if you will, of contractors that are smaller, that are not as familiar with our processes, of what opportunities there are here in the schools for bidding and for work, and then how to get their bids in, and what kind of services we need. Wondering if in any of those downtimes that we might be planning for, and I know we're very busy, so I don't know how many downtimes there are, but But what we might be able to do to encourage people to meet and greet and explore opportunities with the schools, and maybe target some of these small business, gender-oriented groups, companies, and racial minority ethnic groups to encourage them to take a look and look at, especially look at the projects that we have going, and then perhaps think out of the box and into a higher level, and what they would need to do to prepare themselves to effectively and successfully bid for jobs in the future.
That is a great idea of developing some sort of a meet and greet process where we can present the preliminary projects, not necessarily that they're ready for them, but for them to look ahead. This may be coming down the line. That's a great idea. I'll make a note of that to see what we can do about that.
Are you familiar with the West Michigan Minority Contractors Association?
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps they would entertain you as a presenter, GRPS as a presenter, to talk about upcoming projects and how to engage in the pre-qualification and bidding process as well.
Right, and encourage the local first in the development
Yep.
of our
Right.
resources that we have. I know that there's a lot of small businesses that I'm aware of because I run into them all the time. They come through my store and they give me their cards and they're hopeful, and I don't think they know how to or where to apply or how to bid for these jobs. And I just think that, if they were to tour to see some of their projects, to maybe get, some orientation to it, that they might aspire to do that, and we're building the economic prowess of our community.
Excellent. Thank you.
Have we ever considered negotiated work or design build in lieu of hard bid?
I may have to defer that to our legal office.
Yeah, sure.
I believe that by state law we can't do design build.
I've heard
But-
some,
but I don't know for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah. I thought the same thing and was talking, it's been years, to, I forget whom, a contractor who was doing some design build work. So yeah, what's design build, right? I'm going to do my best. It's been a while. So there are three types of contracts in the world of construction. Hard bid, or general contract, right, which is what we do. So an architect draws the plans. Those plans get bid out to a general. The general bids those plans out to the subcontractors. Subcontractors give the numbers to the general bids the project overall based on the numbers the subcontractors have given. It also has to do with who the actual contracts are written to. So in a hard bid, and you guys are going to have to help me, it's between the school district, the owner, and the general contractor, right?
Correct.
And then the general contractor has the contracts with the subcontracts. There's construction management, which is a little different, and I'm forgetting the nuances of exactly CM work.
Yeah, the construction managers, they typically we bring them on early on to
Yeah.
help us manage the budget, schedule, constructability issues, logistics.
Yeah.
And they facilitate the bidding process. So they have all subs given them, and then they do the construction administration.
Yes, and we do not use construction management, or do we?
Yeah, for
We do.
For the
Okay,
big
great.
projects, yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
we do.
So design build brings the contractor in at the beginning. So not necessarily after the plans are drawn, but the contractor and the architect are hired at the same time. And the contractor is sometimes negotiating primarily with the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing contractors early on in the design phase of the project. So you've got everybody kind of at the table, but those contractors who are there early, they're not bidding the work, they're brought in. So when they're part of the design process, they're then going to do the work. And so that's where kind of that competitive bid process is sometimes taken out of the equation, which would be the argument for why not to do that. But from in a hard labor market, the argument for would be because you have that team in place early on. And oftentimes, when I'm getting into the weeds here, you can avoid design conflicts sometimes when you have the contractor at the table early on. Have I done it justice? Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Finally feel useful for a minute. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, fantastic. Any other questions about bond updates or projects in general? Okay.
Just, I really appreciate a lot of the work that I'm seeing, and I think the community as well. Obviously, they have their ideas too, in practicality, like the playground, for example, and how they want to see that. But overall, just seeing the improvements to our buildings, and obviously a lot of the quality of our education that's going up, it's been really nice conversations with people where they see the building, the kids themselves feel like, wow, this is for me. And so I really appreciate that work that you guys are doing, that you all are doing, that really are changing the face of what GRPS looks like, one, but then also how people feel once they're in the buildings, once they're being educated in that. And so I really appreciate that.
While we're on that, can I put in another little pitch for Southwest Community Campus and that whole issue? I don't know if it's been addressed as to what we're going to do to get the playground up and implemented, construction project implemented to improve that.
Well, I know that Dr. Gorman met with the parents that were at the last board meeting. They had a meeting. He was responding to some questions that they had today. So I asked for Dr. Gorman to let me know that I'm going to be the point person. Any questions that they have, it will come to me directly, and I will do my very best to address that. We do have landscape architects that are working on the project, designing it. Based on the comments that they have made, we have asked them to go back and evaluate the existing play equipment that we have to see if we can salvage that and add more to that existing. So that's where we are right now. I do believe that there has been some perhaps misunderstandings along the way, some communication challenges that we're hoping to overcome now.
Okay.
So some of the middle people hopefully are being removed and then they're going straight to the source.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we're hoping for.
Well, I attended that school when I was a student. It was Franklin Elementary, and we had all of what was a gravel parking area, and that served as our playground. And we had some turn bars for people to swing on, and that was it. Mm-hmm. So it has kind of a history of neglect, because even through the years, I've not really seen comparatively in an equity basis any comparison to other schools in our district. And so, I kind of feel what the parents are feeling with that, looking at the lack of progress over the years. However, at one point there was, some development of a playground area, but that quickly got used up and is no longer in the same condition.
Yeah, it's aged and it's time to do some improvements there. Part of the challenges that we're facing with that particular site is that there was a visioning that took place early on with an outside group, and it was a wonderful exercise that they went through. But that visioning, I understand the facilities was not present at these visioning meetings, did set some expectations that were probably unrealistic. The playground that was envisioned today would cost about $1.5 million, which we don't have. We don't have the funds. The other challenge is the equipment was too close together, so it did not meet safety regulations. So even if we could afford it, the site could not support having that many pieces of equipment. So we have to cut it back. We have to design to the budget that we do have. And I understand that's where the unhappiness comes from, because there was an expectation that we couldn't realize, and unfortunately we have to try to deal with it now, and hopefully at the end we can have a meeting of the minds and come up with a solution that people will be okay with, or some people will be okay with.
Sure. Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Our last item today is a refresher, which I think is always helpful. And for the benefit of our new committee member, I asked for Ms. Cribbs to give us a refresher of Finance 101. We use a lot of numbers and acronyms in school finance. I benefit from the refresher too, so enjoy the reminder and the education.
That's what I was gonna say. And at all times, sometimes I'll go into the weeds, but I'll try to. So this is pretty high level. It's kind of And then as you've got questions, definitely always feel free to call me and we can go deeper as you need to, or we can do additional presentations. But so to start off, we just wanted to talk about, we have a lot of different funds at Grand Rapids Public Schools. Our general fund records all the transactions related to the operation of the school district, to do our educational programs for our students and all of the operational type things that we need, except those that are required to be in a different fund. So the other thing over the years, we in Grand Rapids, that includes our athletics fund and our grants. So in numbers terms, we have general operating, we have grants and athletics, all comprise general fund. Special revenue funds, it's another accounting term type thing, so it's records transactions and funds received for designated purposes which require separate accounting because of legal or regulatory provisions or administrative actions. So our biggest one is food service. The GRASP, which is our Grand Rapids Area Summer Program, and Houseman Field, those are ones that we've identified as Grand Rapids Public Schools that we want to track separately. There's a separate income stream there that we want to be able to track separately. And then our new additions to special revenue funds are our student and school activity and our public purpose trust funds. Historically, those have been called fiduciary funds since we identify those as being, we're holding them on behalf of student groups, or the trust funds are primarily like scholarship funds. So but there was an accounting rule change 2 years ago, so now those are designated as special revenue funds. The next group, we have debt service funds. So these funds we track to make our interest and principal payments and other expenditures related to our bonded debt. Capital project funds are the receipt for the acquisition of capital assets, the buildings, the renovations, and the major equipment. So that's when we sell the bonds, the money goes into these capital project funds to be able to do the activities that we're doing. Years ago, for those of you that were on the board, our sinking fund is also a capital project fund, but we're no longer levying that millage. So fiduciary funds, we do have a couple trust funds that are remaining under fiduciary, and we'll continue to monitor those. There are certain things, last year we did have Barnum go through all of our trust funds to make sure we've got them properly classified. At some point, we may be able to go through some steps to move them out of fiduciary and back into just special revenue, so we don't have to track those separately. Oops, sorry, too far. General fund revenue. So there are three basic categories here. We've got local, state, and federal funds. Our local funds and general fund are primarily property taxes. I say investment income, but these days investment income is very minimal. But with interest rates rising, maybe we'll start to generate a little bit. Building rentals, the bigger money comes in through, besides property taxes, the countywide special education millage, the enhancement millage that we passed as a county a few years ago. There's Medicaid and transportation, as well as some grant monies. Our local foundations have been historically very supportive of us, so we have a number of local grants. State funding, that's primarily our biggest one there, is foundation allowance. The state aid categorical revenues, including special ed. There's several regarding retirement categoricals. Section 31A and Section 41 are our other two big state aid categoricals. Federal money, our title programs. We've got Title 1A, 1C, 1D, Title IIA, Title III, there's EL and immigrant, and Title IV. We've got IDA funds, 21st century funds, and in the last few years, we've got COVID-related grants and multiple ones of those.
Before you go on,
Yeah.
I have a wondering, and this one I want to zero in on from a lens of equity, and my understanding of the general fund and capacity building requirements as they relate to special ed and bilingual programs. My wondering is, do we track, can we substantiate how much of our general fund goes to fund what is basic instruction that is appropriate for special ed students and for bilingual or ELL students as part of the general fund, not supplemental funding such as Section 41 and Title III and so forth and on. Do we track, or can we disaggregate the amounts that we have that would enable us to offer those programs if in fact we did not receive federal or supplemental state funding for those categories?
Yes. For special ed, we do track our board level, our base level funding. That's in addition to the IDA funds. For the EL students, there is a budget that is just general fund on top of that, but more of our funding is becoming graded. And so it's like, okay, you've got 31A funds, you've got title funds, you've got Section 41 funds that are just kind of getting graded to the best way that we can provide student service.
But those are supplemental funds.
Yep.
So back to the concise question that I asked, specific to disaggregating or being able to track what portions of the general fund are applicable to provide those services, that in fact we demonstrate that we have the capacity to comply with federal law and state law regarding instruction for special ed kids and for students who are ELL without dependence on supplemental funding. Can we demonstrate that we have the capacity to serve those children as required by law?
I believe, yes, we can. And that's, our budget is, we've got a lot of different categories and components to it, so. But there are separate for EL, there are separate for special ed,
So someone like me would ask then, how many dollars are appropriated to provide the basic services in a delivery mode that is appropriate for those types of students, those special populations from the general fund? You'd be able to demonstrate in dollars how much of the general fund is allocated for that?
That's what I was going to say. We'll have to probably dig deeper into what could actually help you understand.
That is my wondering,
Okay.
and it's been one for a long time. It's one that we work toward establishing equity measures like that in reporting systems. And at one time, under my administration in bilingual ed, when I was an employee, an administrator, pushing for those types of responses from the district, basically disaggregating the general fund and targeting dollars to provide the basic services that were required, demonstrating our ability to respond to capacity building issues and whatnot, that we were able to identify those dollars. And since then, I've not been able to identify them in the budget, and I've reviewed the material. The budget and the pie chart really doesn't show it. And so my question going forward from an equity perspective is, can we do that?
So, Dr. Flores, your concern would be that it, to whatever extent, be equally divided, or to the capacity that, let's say, special ed needs X amount in that budget in order to do an excellent job, right?
If you have 100 students who are special ed, and they get $8,700, right? That's our current FTE from the state. Those $8,700 are separate from special ed federal funding or supplemental funding from the state. Those are additions intended to join or to enhance that $8,700 and make it more possible to build a better program to serve those children. But obviously, those 100 children generate the $8,700 for this district, which we put into the general fund, and that should be deployed with special services, special teachers with special certifications to provide them a special prescription of instruction. The same applies to ELL children, bilingual children, who need and who deserve and who are required to be given a prescription of instruction that is appropriate to their needs. In addition, they're given federal funds and state funds, right, from very special categorical programs to add to that $8,700 to enhance their delivery services, because on an equity basis, they need more. They need a little more, special instructional kits. They need special books. They need, talking computers who can speak 2 languages. They need, specially trained bilingual teachers. But what has happened in the past is districts have taken the money and put it all into the general fund, and then of course there's general priorities and whatnot. And what winds up happening is that the special ed and the bilingual children get less rather than more. They're not getting their appropriate allocation to ensure that they get instructors that can speak the 2 languages and remove the language barrier, or special ed children, special needs children who deserve to have high qualified instructors who are prepared to remove the obstacles that they encounter in the classroom to be successful. Follow me? It is the capacity of our district to be able to serve them equitably. And we should be able to do that without federal or state assistance. We should be able to demonstrate that we could provide those services to them appropriately with the funding that we get from their formula funds. And so I believe we need to track that.
You're saying if those federal funds and state funds were to go away,
If
supplemental,
they were taken away,
we could still provide services at 8,700, even though we know they take more. Right.
correct.
Okay, I
So we need the ability to be able to show that what is our commitment financially, and if the $8,700, you take so much for administration, so much for transportation, so much for, support services and whatnot, but whatever that core instructional amount that is allocated and directed to support those students, that core instructional amount needs to be demonstrated in a reporting system that says we have the capacity to serve, and this is what we're serving from the general fund.
Believe it's possible to serve one student with high needs with just that 87?
Every student
I'm not saying
generates that.
Do you think
Right.
it's possible? Because I'm just thinking of some of the students I work with and the amount of needs that they have. It just seems like $8,700 for a whole year of instruction. It's like, is that even possible without the supplemental?
Exactly. You want the supplemental, but you have to demonstrate that you're putting in the base. You need the base is not there from the general fund. And if there's not a system that tracks that and guarantees that we have that ability to provide that and that we're actually doing that, then we're doing a disservice. We're giving students less than what is required from the $8,700 that is allocated, that they bring to the district. And that's been an equity issue and one that I've pushed forward for many years now.
I hear what you're saying. I think it's interesting. I'd like to talk to you about it sometime because I also just think from an equity standpoint, there may be kids that don't need the full 8,700. So then if we're speaking equitably, are we saying that each student should have the 8,700 or do some get less based on need? I mean, that's a huge conversation to think about.
know at a national level, when we go to Washington, D.C. for advocacy, there was certainly a platform for years and probably still there that special ed is underfunded and that we only get a percentage of what the real cost is. So we're already at a disadvantage, even on top of, the FTE we receive.
But recognize that the state has now begun to increase the amounts of supplemental funding. So I'm not saying, we got the base funding and then supplemental funding. And we should not totally rest on supplemental funding
Yeah.
to provide the services that are required for these students to be
And
successful.
I'm hearing that you're hoping that we're not taking away
Mm-hmm.
the base because now we have revenue in another.
Well, what I'm saying is that historically, there has not been a system to identify the base that needs to be supplemented. Okay?
Okay.
And true,
The questions like this that are saying, okay, either give us the report or show us how that's being done so that we can actually put a price tag. Hey, it's 8,700, but in reality, it's costing us this. And then the supplemental helps, but
Right.
in reality, the bottom cost is actually 97 or something like that. And then you can discuss about, what that looks like, lobby for all those kinds of things, because now we have black and white figures that tell us or are communicating, this is what it actually takes us to do this actual work. And it's not just hypothetical, it's not just throwing numbers, it's actually saying something that's more accurate. Yeah.
and it comes into how you treat the budget.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right.
Okay. So we'll work on getting something more detailed and we'll work with Ms.
Sure.
Shockley and, oops, sorry.
Thank you.
Should pay attention. Okay, scroll. So foundation allowances are our largest portion of our revenue, and it's calculated by using the blended student count times the per pupil amount, the 8,700 now. So, and blended count over the years, the legislature can choose to do something different. Right now, it is 90% of our fall count and 10% of the prior spring count. So it follows calendar year generally. Some years they've made it 75-25. COVID years, we went into a super blend that got really complicated, but we're back to 90-10 calendar year counts. So, part of that though, it is into two components. There's the local property tax collections and then the state aid. So this Kent County submits the property taxable value information to the state. They calculate out what the amount that we should get from property tax collections, and the state funds the difference between those two. So kind of just a rounded calculation. So there's our 8,700 per pupil, our blended student count of 14,450, that's an approximate, not an exact, to get to a total foundation of 125,715,000. 36,750,000 of that should come in through property tax collections, with the balance then coming through our state aid payments. So here's our infamous pie chart. With property taxes being about 14%, other local sources, that's the county special ed, the millage, the enhancement millage, Medicaid is in there as well. The state restricted, that's a lot of the categorical payments. The state unrestricted is primarily the foundation allowance state aid portion. And then the federal money, that's tweaked up these last few years because of the COVID funds. It's skewing our numbers more towards the federal side than they typically are. And then transfers from other funds, we do transfer out of food service and indirect charge, but it's, with the COVID money being so big, the food service transfer doesn't even register a full percentage point anymore.
Before our stimulus funding through COVID relief, what was the federal percentage typically?
I'm gonna say in the upper teens.
Okay, thank you.
So here's a list of our major grants, the regular grants that are kind of the ongoing. So when we say Section 31A, that's a state, it's a formula grant. It's supplemental services, as Dr. Flores mentioned, it's supplemental. And we get about $10 million. We budgeted about $10 million for this year. Section 41, again, that's supplemental services for the EL scholars. And we budgeted 1.2 million. That is one that has grown over the last several years. Great Start Readiness Program, that's school readiness for 4-year-old program. There's $6 million there. Title 1A is federal, and that's a formula. The $13,900,000 does include our carryover. Because of COVID, the last few years we've had unlimited carryover because it's been a little challenging to spend it how we would normally spend it. So that isn't like a 1-year allocation, that's an allocation plus our carryover. Title 2A, again, that's got carryover in there for the 2.7 million, and that we use primarily for staff training and recruiting activities. Title 3, that's our supplemental services for EL and immigrant scholars, it's at the 700,000. Title 4, that is for a newer program out of the title program, so that's well-rounded education opportunities and safety and health opportunities, as well as a small component there for technology, but the technology piece is a little misleading because only a small portion can actually be used for devices, so we don't focus a lot of technology dollars out of Title 4. 21st Century is a competitive federal grant, and that's for our after-school programming. And the IDEA funding, that's the special ed, for targeted special ed services, and we use that for staff costs.
Can you explain to me what it means by formula?
There's a formula to calculate how much GRPS will get.
Okay.
So Section 31A, there's a formula in state aid that says you're going to get X dollars amount per this
Student or per.
Yeah, this type of student, you get funding for. EL, you get so much for this type of student. So.
And then you have to prove that that money was utilized in a certain way? Okay.
And we routinely have auditors come in to verify. And here's what we have budgeted on our COVID-related grants. So ESSER formula, 21-22, we've got a little over $1 million. ESSER Ed Equity, again, a little over $1 million. And the gear funding, again, that's a little over $1 million. All 3 of those funds we're looking to have fully expended by June 30. We are on track to do that for the GRPS portion. All 3 of those grants also have a required portion for the private schools. So we are working with them as well to, as best we can, make sure that their funds are expended as well. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, we've got about 31 million. That's our full ESSER 2 allocation. Looking to spend a large portion of that this year. We're not going to spend the whole 31 million, I don't think, so some of that will carry over into next year, and then we're going to start hitting the ESSER 3 more significantly in next year's budget. And here is our expense chart, and again, this one's a little bit skewed because of the ESSER funding. Typically, our salaries and benefits are higher. I think this is about 71%, and typically salary and benefits would run higher than that, but with all of the technology purchases and the other supply and purchase services that we're doing, the software and the licenses fees are coming through purchase services, and supplies is where a lot of our tech is as well. So the salaries and benefits are not where we would normally see those. And this is another one I know you've all seen Mr. Ober's fund balance chart, but this is always a good way to close it out, to say, here's our beginning fund balance. This is, there's a lot of different ways to do a fund balance percentage. As a district, we are now using the early warning system methodology that the state does, so that works off from revenue. And you get a little bit more technical to get to the calculation, but it's the local, the federal, and the athletics funding in there as well. It doesn't include restricted grants. And to come out to, right now, off from Amendment 1, we're looking at a projected fund balance of 13%.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's great. It's great. A really good refresher of the ways in which we receive and spend money. Yeah. Any last burning questions for?
I just remember
Rhonda?
taking these classes in
Yeah.
MSBA, but it's nice to, after this period of time, actually understand more, to tell you the truth. But it's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, that was our last item. So we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.